Thanks again for listening in to Your Shadow Advisor, a weekly program about navigating higher education from a first-generation person of color perspective. I'm your host, Professor Daryl Wanzer-Serrano. Today is the first of two episodes with my very special guest, Christina Ceballos. In February 2018, Christina founded the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Support Facebook group, an amazing Facebook group that if you're in public service and it sounds like a good fit, you really should join. She formed this group after not finding any active groups on that platform. She's built a small but mighty team of 16 administrators and moderators, which now serves 135,000 members and growing. She's served in many capacities in public service, in AmeriCorps, the U.S. Peace Corps, nonprofits, and government. And she lives in Austin, Texas, just down the street from me, kind of down the highway, with her husband and two rescue dogs. So thank you so much for joining me for this podcast, Christina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I try to start all my interviews on this podcast with a similar question for all my guests, and that's what I call my superhero origin story question. So the question is, what's your superhero origin story? How did you get started on your path in higher education? To make that decision to go on to graduate school as well, to enter professional life, all of that. What motivated you and what enabled your movement in and through these spaces?
First of all, to be equated as a superhero is, or like this mythology is super humbling. To begin, at 6 years old, I saw my mother graduate from Metropolitan State University in Minnesota. That's where I grew up. And it was a very special day. It was very monumental. And from that experience, I knew that higher education in some form or fashion was going to be in my future. By that experience and by my mother's modeling, she taught me to take every opportunity presented to me. I categorically am fiercely an independent person. I was always committed to lifelong learning, and this all just kind of, wove together throughout my journey. So in high school, I learned about post-secondary enrollment option available to public high schoolers in the state of Minnesota. It's like dual enrollment here in Texas.
Yeah, we had it called Running Start in Washington State. I did that too.
Oh, fantastic. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Very cool. We have that in common because I was able to knock out like 32 college credits after 2 years of part-time. I went to high school part-time, to college part-time. I was very, very active. I was volunteering somewhat, as well as playing tennis, having a part-time job. And I was able to get some of my core classes for my undergraduate degree completed. By the support of my mother and stepfather, I wouldn't be here without that. And I'm super grateful for that. They enabled and encouraged a lot of that. As well as going into higher education, and going after my actual 4-year degree, I always wanted to go to the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, just love Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's where I ended up going and completing 4 years. I was able to get 2 degrees, one in French and one in global studies with a focus on human rights, international economics, social sciences of that sort. And they provided a 4-year scholarship, but it wasn't just merit based. It was merit plus financial need. So I had most of my 4 years covered until I got to my senior year, and that's when I had to take out the big chunk of my student loans from undergrad. And but I was able to study abroad and I lived in France for a year. I was able to I got back from France. I'd almost finished my required courses. I could have graduated at 21. And I was like, no, 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 no. I really, really wanted to like take full advantage. I was like, okay, I had been thinking about international relations, but at the time, globalization was really becoming a new area, and IR was moving into global studies. And so I was like, wow, a lot of my coursework from France doubled up as well into the global studies degree. So I was able to get four. I was able to get 2 degrees while my under my 4 years. Later on, after I graduated from college, that's when I went to AmeriCorps, and U.S. Peace Corps was always on my radar. And
Hmm.
when I got back, I moved to Austin, Texas, and I was working in the nonprofit sector and finding it very, very, very competitive. And I was hoping that a certificate in nonprofit management and leadership, which is a great program at Austin Community College, would be enough to advance through that. I found it not a very big differentiating factor for myself, and so that's when I considered grad school.
Hmm.
And I went to St. Ed's. I got a MS in organizational leadership and ethics, which is an alternative MBA, and was able to apply that to. I've been able to apply that ever since graduating. Another thing that encouraged me to pursue a graduate degree, I had done Peace Corps, and there are a lot of fellowship programs around the country. And I think there might be the closest one is a newer one, newer program at Texas State University. But that was later after I graduated.
Uh-huh.
And I moved to Austin, fell in love with Austin. This is where I met my husband. And I was like, I'm not really gonna leave Austin to go to grad school. I wasn't really ready for that. And there's so many great higher education institutions here. And so 2007 was the same year I got back from Peace Corps. It was the same year that they signed PSLF into law. And I was like, that just opened up all the opportunities and possibilities for grad school. And that's what also enabled me to go to grad schools because the PSLF program existed.
Wow. Yeah, I finished my doctoral degree in 2007 before PSLF happened, right? And when it did, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is totally going to solve my problems, which included six figures, kind of, yeah. Like I honestly forget what it was when I started at this point. Probably, I think around 130, somewhere between 130 and $150,000. Um, but I couldn't get into PSLF because for various reasons. I mean, you probably remember. Maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but the communication was so bad about what you actually needed to do, and there was such differing advice coming from different entities. Um, and they also hadn't worked out a bunch of the kinks. Like I was married at the time. My spouse had student loans also, but the way they calculated stuff, they would take both incomes into consideration, but they would only evaluate one set of loans at a time. To figure out like a repayment plan, it basically had me being like a rich person paying back these student loans, which just wasn't the case. Like it would have been impossible to do anyway. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Why don't we start talking about PSLF though? Really. So, what is the history of the PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program? You mentioned it started in 2007. Do you know how that came to be, and how was it supposed to work? Which, because it was a model, it's what enabled you to go on to graduate school. So explain this a little bit for those who maybe don't know, haven't heard a lot about the program.
Sure. So in 2007, there was a bill that was passed into law that included improvements to higher education, including the formation of the public service loan forgiveness program. And the intent was to ensure a steady pipeline of educated individuals to go into the fields, go into various public service related fields in government and nonprofits. So this is anywhere from your local municipal government to the federal government and any nonprofits that are designated 501c3 under the IRS. And those are tax exempt organizations. And so, I'm sorry, I'm using a lot of so's. That's where my Minnesota comes out. And
I use a lot of rights. I use like you know, right? Question
but
mark?
like that's how I'm like I'm at ease. Like I'm dropping so's left and right. Okay, that PSLF program was intended to support folks to stay in public service at least 10 years while they, fulfilled the repayment obligations of 10 years of monthly payments. And if you look at the CFR, like the regulation, the general rule, it's very vague. And that vagueness, speaking as a contract manager right now, professional contract manager, that vagueness really just doesn't help in the actual implementation of the program. Like, how does the rubber meet the road? That's not even there. So I think the program really started off being super vague by that lack of like clarity. 5 years later, they went 5 years, they being the Department of Education and administrations went 5 years without producing an employment certification form. So for 5 years, people are thinking, oh, my employment's being tracked. I'm being tracked. I'm just like in the program. And that was not the case at all.
Yeah.
Additionally, in those first 5 years, FFEL loans were no longer eligible, like midway through that first 5 years towards PSLF. Those got, you know, kicked out of the program. And that left a lot of people like myself. I had FFEL loans because I was in public service from 2002 and onwards, like after graduation, barely making minimum wage and unable to pay on my loans. I used up all of my forbearance months with under the Stafford Direct Loan Program at that time.
Hmm.
I had to consolidate into ACS in order to access more forbearance time because there's no way I was making any payments. I was barely eating. Like I had to like when I was in AmeriCorps, I was on food stamps to survive. My paycheck, half of it went to rent. And so the reality started sinking in. A lot of people were suffering. A lot of people were thinking they were on track. They were told, no, you're not on track. You need to consolidate and start the repayment clock over. That's what happened to me with my FFEL loans. Um, but that first 10 years. So fast forward to 10 years, late 2017, when the first round of public servants who should have been eligible for PSLF, those months between October and like January, rejection, 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 like that's where that 2% rate
Yeah.
really started popping up and getting attention. And I was getting nervous. I was getting very nervous. I was like, yeah, it wasn't until 2017 where I went back 10 years to certify my past employment, my first, 5 or 6 years qualifying employment.
Yeah.
It took me until 2017 to go back and certify my employment starting in 2017 to present. Like there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of us had to do that.
Yeah.
That rejection rate, feeling alone, not really knowing anybody else, pursuing PSLF is one of the main reasons why I wanted to start the program or the Facebook group, as well as, you know, I want to do everything to eliminate suffering. Like just because I suffered doesn't mean that I want somebody else to suffer. Any way that we can help people suffer less, that is also a primary motivating factor.
That's great. Well, so let's take a step back real quick to talk about what does it take to actually qualify, hypothetically, assuming all the stars are aligned. What does it take to qualify for PSLF? What are the loan type requirements, the employment requirements, the repayment requirements? Bracketing the waiver, because we'll spend a lot of time talking about the waiver here, but just for the core PSLF program, what are you supposed to do to be able to qualify for that?
Well, first of all, PSLF is a program that you don't enroll in or sign up, like necessarily sign up for. Like there's paperwork, yes, but in essence, people working in public service related fields uh, make themselves eligible for PSLF, and then they maintain their eligibility for PSLF for 10 years. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be eligible? It means you need to first have qualifying employment with a governmental or nonprofit entity or organization. Two, you need to have qualifying loans, such as, and the qualifying loan type is federal direct student loans. And then you need to make 120 payments on those loans, monthly payments over 10 years minimum. And people tend to confuse, being eligible versus enrolling into. Like you don't do that. You just you get yourself eligible if you're in public service. Then another confusing point is, well, what if I make just $121 payments? Will that count? No, it will not. You need to you have to have 1 month of qualifying service plus one qualifying payment. In addition, that qualifying payment has to be through a PSLF eligible income driven repayment plan. And those are like the core three factors that make individuals eligible for PSLF.
Okay, excellent. And I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes to the studentaid.gov websites about PSLF and their FAQ and stuff like that, as well as links to your Facebook group where
Right. And just to add to that,
uh-huh.
my team and I just delivered a webinar with CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and we cover those fundamentals very clearly. The slides are in there. You can go back and watch it. It hasn't been posted yet. I will provide that link to you, Daryl, when it's live. It's also going to be shared in the Facebook group, of course. But like I said, it's a confusing program. People learn in different ways. So one of the things that I find is repeating myself. Actually, it starts sinking in. It starts sinking in, and it takes a while. It's not an easy program to navigate.
So speaking of it not being an easy program to navigate, right? You mentioned the like 2% rate of success initially in 2017. Like it's been a really challenging program to navigate. People have had really poor success, and that's been getting better. What are some of the things that have made it better leading up to what we'll spend the rest of our time talking about, basically, which is the current temporary waiver that Biden put in place?
So I think that the data kind of overshadows like the strides the previous administrations had made. FFEL loans weren't eligible because the Department of Education didn't own those loans. Like they were backed by the federal government, but they were owned by private institutions like ACS. That was mine at the time. And so like that whole transition, like FFEL loans were no longer eligible. Yeah, that's a problem, but they didn't necessarily do a great job communicating that. And I felt misled also by my servicers.
That must have been what I had too, because I had Stafford subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans that were serviced by Sally Mae, and then became Navient. I consolidated as soon as I graduated because the rates were about to go up, 2007. So I was able to consolidate at a low rate, and I was kind of pressured into consolidating, but I didn't consolidate through the federal servicer. I consolidated through Sally Mae because that's who already had my loans, and it seemed like it made sense. But it probably also would have ended up biting me had I actually applied for, or had I actually tried to follow through with PSLF, because those probably wouldn't have been eligible after 5 years.
I mean, we can go back and hash out all the missteps and misguidance, but fundamentally, over those first 10 years, a lot of people were misled. A lot of people were told inaccurate information. And the government did take some measures to make it right. There is before the limited waiver was announced, there was also a a temporary expanded PSLF program,
Hmm.
and those handled were that was a policy, or a new program with PSLF that was to help people who were on the wrong income driven repayment plan prior to get credit for that.
Okay.
One of my administrators got TEPSLF, so before the limited waiver was announced, and she was eligible for PSLF under TEPSLF. So when you're in your Fed loan account, or soon to be Mohila account, you have two tracks. You got a PSLF track and a TEPSLF track. If you've been on a PSLF eligible income driven repayment plan, most of your payments are going to qualify for both. Some people are only eligible for, or have, a quantity of payments eligible under TEPSLF because they were on the wrong income, quote unquote, the wrong income driven repayment plan, the
Hmm.
non PSLF eligible repayment plan in the past.
Hmm.
So that's just something that one of the things that they've done to improve the program is that TEPSLF, in addition to issuing an actual employment certification form and informing people and building out federal student aid with a very good wealth, actually, of resources. Is it reader friendly? Not exactly. Is it visually appealing? Not exactly. Is it digestible? Like, again, you got to go read and reread. You also need, any public servant really, really needs to understand first and foremost, what kinds of loans do they have in their student loan portfolio? If anybody is in public service and they refinance their loans with a SoFi, or any of the other student loan private student loan companies, they then they then pull those loans out of the federal student loan system, and they will not be eligible for PSLF ever.
Oh, wow.
So, so there's a difference between consolidation and refinancing. So let's get really clear about that too.
Okay.
You and I consolidated our formerly FFEL loans back into direct consolidated loans. We never refinanced our loans to private. We kept our loans in the federal loan system, or at least federal loan system that recognizes
Yeah.
some, past types of student loans. So I just really, really want to make that clear for people. Refinancing and consolidating are not the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a really important distinction.
Very, very.
So, what did the waiver actually do? Um, and and how has it worked? So, like, what makes the waiver different than the temporary expanded PSLF?
Well, the waiver, was like this gift from the Department of Education and the administration that in my almost 15 years at that time, I was over 14 years into PSLF, never imagined I could never have like even imagined something like this drastic of this easing of rules in my wildest dreams.
Hmm.
This is the biggest gift that any like public service worker right now has been given in the whole history of this program. And so what did the waiver do? It eased so many of those stricter requirements for public service workers to get their loans eligible, to get those past payments counted that may have happened before consolidation. It allowed public service workers who have those ineligible FFEL loans still in their portfolio or Perkins loans still in their student loan portfolio to consolidate them into direct consolidated loans. And then even any of the past payments that any public service worker made, eligible payments made on those old loan types now count. It also for dismisses the income driven repayment plan portion of the PSLF program. So going even further than TEPSLF and said it doesn't matter, quote unquote, what kind of repayment plan you had in the past. Even if you made a partial payment, we're going to give you credit for that. Even if you were in public service for until like the 10th of the month and then your payment didn't happen until the 17th of the month, that's a qualifying payment, right? So it's just made it so much easier.
Yeah.
And fundamentally what it does, it whittles it down to two things. If you have qualifying certified employment and had your student loans in repayment, that's what it boils down to. Those two factors among all the other factors. So this is huge. It was a huge gift. And wow, did it impact my PSLF Facebook group.
Yeah.
Wow, the stories.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just
You know,
incredible.
it seemed too good to be true because I remember when it was initially announced, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, holy crap! Does this mean that I can actually? Because I've worked, at universities since I graduated, right? And so I got on, I filled out I updated my account information at studentaid.gov. I started filling out the paperwork, and then I remember one of the first things I get back. I fill everything out, and it says, "Well, you have zero eligible payments, because you don't have the right kind of loans. You haven't been in a repayment plan." And so it was still feeding me, it was making that evaluation based off of PSLF and not the waiver. And so, but still, I was like, well, yep, it was too good to be true. So I like gave it up until a friend of mine, who had very similar loans to me, had been under Navient, filled out the stuff, got it transferred to Fed loan, got zeroed out, and I was like, well, maybe I should submit this stuff, even though every step along the way it seems to be telling me that I'm wrong. I'm just going to do it anyway. So the communication, I feel like, hasn't been great, but it wasn't until I heard from her, and then also through another friend found your Facebook group. I'm like, okay, this seems to be a thing. What's the worst that can happen? I'm making payments for 30 years or however long. The worst that happens is I keep doing that because if I reconsolidate, I'm keeping the same interest rate anyway. So I'm going to give it a try. Um, and then my happy day came. I never, you know, if people who are listening, if you haven't joined the Facebook group yet, and you do, you'll see lots of talk about trophies and counts. And I was like waiting for my trophies. I was waiting for my count updates, and those never happened. It was just like, I would obsessively log in every couple of days, and I just randomly logged in one day, and it was zero. And I'm like, I never got any updated counts. I never got trophies. Things are just missing from my account. I'm like, oh shoot, maybe I've been transferred to the new servicer. And waited, and then I got the official letter, right, that said, hey, your loans have been forgiven under public service loan forgiveness in the waiver, which seems to be a not uncommon experience also. Especially, it seems like that's all kind of ramped up lately, where people are just like, they're like trying to get people through. So what's the deal with how is my experience with the kind of poor communication and the confusing process, is that common or uncommon?
Oh, it's very common.
Okay.
So, first of all, throughout this waiver period since October 6, 2021, we've seen multiple updates to federal student aid. We've seen more and more FAQs be added to
Mm-hmm.
that. And we've also seen the issuance of the IDR waiver, which is a whole other thing. The rollout of the waiver has been rocky at best. However, they are fixing it. The DOE and DOE FSA are working with loan servicers, student loan servicers like FedLoan, like Mohila, and they will be updating people's accounts multiple times. Like my
Mm-hmm.
account got updated multiple times in the past since October of last year. And so, as founder of this Facebook group, one of our core missions is to be a resource hub for public service workers with the most accurate and up-to-date information. One of the main things that we were waiting for after October 6th is if people consolidate under the waiver or have consolidated under the waiver in the past, or I'm sorry, prior to the waiver, any consolidation, will that highest payment count actually be applied to all loans? We waited until November 11th, like 6 weeks after the waiver, for clarification. And my team got together, wrote a letter to Richard Cordray at FSA, the Secretary of Education, Cardona, the Undersecretary of Education, Caval, as well as to all the senators on the Education Subcommittee.
Wow.
Still waiting for my official response. It is now August 23rd, right? And in that letter, we asked, and this is on the Facebook group, by the way, it's in the files. You can look it up. We emailed it, we mailed it, we sent it certified mail. We asked, can you please clarify this point? Because there are people who need to know if they should consolidate because they have multiple timelines, like I did.
Yeah.
I consolidated in 2012, my undergrad loans, and then I graduated from grad school in 2013. I really now wish I would have waited until I graduated to consolidate them all together, because on November 12th, a day after we sent the email and sent that letter, Cordray came out and said via email, we're going to need more time to apply the waiver. Please give us patience. By 9 p.m. that night, my undergraduate loans, the two consolidated loans, were gone. Gone. Forgiven.
Holy cow.
And I felt like I've never felt that horrible before. And then by November 17th is the first day I saw on the federal student aid website that yes, if you consolidated or have consolidated or consolidate, you will get that higher payment count on the FAQs on the federal student aid website. I was distraught. I am still distraught. I'm still crushed. And I have sent, so when that happened, I was in a pit for the rest of the year of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I was very limitedly engaging in my Facebook group. I saw people getting PSLF. Some of them had just consolidated their newer graduate school loans with their older loans, and they were getting theirs forgiven, but I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
And mine were still there. My graduate loans, which is the lion's share of
Yeah.
my portfolio, right? 60K plus, right? And I took some time, went to visit my in-laws in Mexico, and January 1st, I was like, no one's gonna fight for me but me. You're not gonna fight for me. My husband doesn't, he would, but he doesn't know. I didn't
Hmm.
know either. So I escalated every known pathway known to humanity in terms of student loans in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So escalated to Fed loan, escalated to FSA ombudsman, escalated to CFPB. Dead end, dead end, dead end, dead end, dead end. It's still a dead end. I'm still waiting to hear back. How are they going to deal with this?
Yeah.
So yes, the communication of this limited waiver rollout has been very bad. I count 4 emails in my inbox, and I've been eligible for PSLF pretty much since 2007.
Uh-huh.
Like I've been maintaining my eligibility. And then I'm still seeing people getting partial forgiveness. Partial.
Oh.
When they didn't necessarily know the mechanics of consolidating would actually, this is the big part. We have been drilled into our heads. If you consolidate, your counts start back at zero. The waiver undoes this. It's eliminated this fact under the waiver.
Hmm.
But so many people are like, we're busy. We're public service workers. We have huge emotionally time, laborious like jobs, and then staying on top of our student loans is just this additional thing. And then throw on top the waiver and trying to figure all that out. There are people who are still experiencing partial forgiveness like myself, as recently as I've seen in this month. And it ain't right.
Wow.
So I'm really hoping that FSA and DOE fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's really rough that, we've had the waiver now for almost a year, and it feels like communication is almost like just now starting to get better, right? In terms of the build out of the FAQs and answering some of these questions. And, and here we are, basically 2 months from the waiver officially ending, right? On,
69
on, on the,
days. 69 days today.
so
Sorry.
we'll, no, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, this is part of why I also wanted to get you on the program and get these episodes up as soon as possible, because I know for a fact there's other people like me who gave up, who when the waiver first came out, they looked into it and gave up then too, because because it said you have zero payments. Um, and who are still kind of like wondering whether to take the step to fill stuff out, and to actually like to navigate another bureaucracy when their lives are spent navigating bureaucracies, in public service, right? Um, and I know that because like when I posted my success story on my like personal Facebook page, like a bunch of people started reaching out to me like, wait, does this work? Like, what do people need to do? Like, if it's someone like me who wasn't on track for PSLF, they knew they weren't on track for PSLF because they weren't in the right repayment plan, or whatever, right? What are the steps for them to take, to at least get answers? So, like, what's step number one?
Well, so I'm gonna preface my answer with a little story.
Okay.
I have a friend, a really good friend, who lives in Texas here, and she's been in public education her entire career, and she's got advanced degrees. She called her servicer, and her servicer's like, "Well, why don't you apply for teacher loan forgiveness first?" And I was like, and she when she told me this, I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. So first of all, if you apply for teacher loan forgiveness, it's going to delay your processing for PSLF. She's like, well, I've got all my paperwork. And I'm like, no, don't even do that. Just throw it away, shred it, recycle it. Okay. Just go with PSLF. Trust me on this. And then please call me first before proceeding with anything because her servicer clearly was not aware.
Mhm.
Um, just, text me if you have any questions. And so here's the first thing people need to know. They do need to understand and have a very good idea of their student loan portfolio and about how much time they've been in public service and about how many years of public of payments they've made.
Mhm.
Um, Getting really clear about this, what loan type and what qualifying employment you have is like the baseline. Okay, people need to know right now that if they've been in public service and have been blessed like many of us with this COVID forbearance, this payment pause, all these months since March of 2020 count towards public service loan forgiveness at $0 payment, $0 payments, meaning zero payment, actual payments. All those months will now count towards public service loan forgiveness as long as you have that qualifying employer. So that's like just where to start. And where you get your student aid or where you get your student loan information is on your account at federal student aid or studentaid.gov. You'll be able to download a file. It says my student loan data, and it'll export into a text file, and that'll give you your whole loan history. Okay.
So, since folks who listen to the show are mostly in higher education, they're professors or grad students. Of course, the waiver is not going to matter to people who are currently graduate students, I think. Um, but what? Maybe it will. So first, my employer question, and then you can tell me why you think this does matter to people who are currently graduate students. So, the employer question is, do they have to be employed at public universities or colleges, or can they be employed at private nonprofit colleges and universities as well? Because I know that was like one of those question marks early on in the program. Um, what's the word on that?
Well, both if both count if that private university is organized as a 501c3 nonprofit
Okay.
organization. I don't know many. I'm not in higher ed. I was in it for a very short stint. Um, I don't know of any private universities that don't fall under that category, but there could very well be. There could be private universities that are just, also companies or organized as like for-profit corporations. I know that
Yeah.
there's definitely for-profit colleges,
Yeah.
but you know who those are like off the
Mhm.
top, right? Like DeVry and ITT. Some of these schools that uh, have defrauded their students.
Sure.
But we,
Yes.
we, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole because we're focused on public service workers working in private, nonprofit, private colleges that are organized as 501c3s. Those qualify.
Okay. Which probably includes places like St. Ed's or
Yes.
St. Scholastica or any of the 43 other Saint schools in the Minneapolis area.
Oh, well, St. Edward's is in Austin.
Well, yeah. No, I know that. Yeah. But I'm thinking up and do the call back
Um,
to your Minneapolis route.
St. Thomas,
St. Thomas,
McAllister, back up in the Twin Cities.
St. Scholastica. I had a friend who taught at St. Scholastica.
St.
Um,
Olaf.
yeah. Um, so you gave me a look when I said current graduate students, this may not apply as much to. Why'd you give me the look?
I gave that look because there are some graduate students who may have been actually in, employed by public service organizations before going to grad school, like myself. So I
Mm.
graduated, this is going to date me, I graduated in 2001 with my undergrad, and I didn't go back to grad school until 2011. I had almost 10 years in employment in public service organizations. Well, actually, from 2007 to 2011, I was employed with a nonprofit when I was going to grad school. I was working full time and went to school part time at St. Ed's.
Okay. So something that that they should look into that could at the very least give them a jump start on their counts so that when they finish up their current degree, they've got a jump start. They can enter into one of the, assuming the waiver goes away, which may not be the best assumption. We could talk about that more later. But at the very least, if they had 5 years of employment, of qualifying employment, and they were, they could use this waiver to get those
Yes.
60 payments kind of on the record.
Right. So this is fundamental. If you have any public service loan, or I'm sorry, if you have any public service employment, qualifying employment before the waiver, and you had the wrong loans or you're on the wrong repayment plan or whatever, that stuff counts now. So even if you don't have your whole 10 years, you can get eligible, get those months eligible by filling out the paperwork, doing the PSLF application now, and getting it in by October 31st. Because at the end of the day, if you can get all your stuff up to current by the 31st, that carries with you through the rest of your PSLF journey. So again, it's not a program you sign up for. It's something you get yourself eligible for. And once you certify your employment, whether that's going all the way back to 2007, right? That
Hmm.
follows you for the rest of your PSLF journey. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So that's really a fundamental misunderstanding I've seen in my group. And again, the waiver isn't something you sign up for because it's a part of PSLF. It's something you get yourself eligible for. So
Yeah. So, and this will be my last waiver question. And it's been a little while since I've seen this discussion, and so it may have been resolved in the Facebook group definitively already. But there was some question about timeline here as the waiver is coming up close to expiring, right? And whether it was enough to kind of like get that application in, or whether you needed to be consolidated before the 31st. Um, what's the like? What's is there official word on this? Like, when is it too late for someone to take action under the waiver, assuming that it doesn't get extended, which it very well might?
so the way our Facebook group operates is that the deadline's the deadline.
Okay.
We do not until it's in black and white. We don't offer any perspective on the
Okay.
matter. Um, but I'm really glad I can put that out there. Um, so let's say you've not certified any of your employment and you have FFEL loans and you've been in public service for at least 5 years or 2 years, whatever, beforehand,
Yeah.
and you've been making payments. Don't wait till the last minute. Just get the ball rolling. And this is the suggested order. First, consolidate your loans into direct consolidated loan ASAP. As soon as you hear this podcast, go into your federal student aid account and consolidate. Because if you can recover any of those eligible months of service because you made payments on your FFEL loans or your Perkins loans, right? You want those to count. So start the consolidation ASAP. Then get all, while that consolidation is going, okay, it's a process. You got to give it a little time to work. Um, get all of your past employment certified. Go into your federal student aid account, fill out the PSLF help tool. There are links. You'll be able to see it. And then submit all of those after your consolidation is done. Now we're getting really close. Like I said, 69 days as of this airing, this taping. Okay, it's going to be less time by the time you actually hear this.
Hmm.
It'll be October 31st. You have to get all of your paperwork in by the 31st. You don't have to have everything completed. So consolidate. If you have all direct loans, great. You are halfway there. Just go and get all of your past employment certified that apply and overlap with the life of those loans and get it all in before the 31st.
Hmm.
We're also dealing with another transition in the middle of all this. I know it's frustrating for a lot of people. As of this taping, Mohila, the Fed loan transition to Mohila, the accounts moving to Mohila is about 50% complete. They anticipate all PSLF eligible accounts to be moved to Mohila by the end of September. So once you consolidate, you got to choose Mohila as your servicer, and then give it 4 weeks for everything to kind of start showing up over at Mohila, and then once you get your account set up at Mohila, you can upload your PSLF applications directly through your account like you could at FedLoan, which is
Yeah.
awesome. If you're nervous like I am, just with timelines and everything, do your consolidation, wait 2 weeks, then submit by mail, certified mail, your PSLF applications for all your past employment. Second, do it by certified mail. Give it at least 2 weeks after you complete that, or after you confirm on your consolidation. It's nerve wracking
Yeah.
for me because I've been doing this for almost 5 years. So my mind is blown that this waiver exists. I'm very grateful for it. I am grateful that my undergrad loans were forgiven. However, I feel like there's still a fix required, and it's not just me. When I'm speaking on this stuff, I know it's never just about me. It's about the dozens and dozens of people I know who also have partial forgiveness right now,
Hmm.
and then the many, many more who aren't even aware.
Yeah.
So I'm very nervous for the end of this waiver period. Many of my admins and moderators are very nervous because we can see if this ends on October 31st, like it's saying it's supposed to end, there are still going to be people left behind.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that breaks my heart. And so that's why I'm trying to take every opportunity to speak with folks like you and partner with Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to do the webinars. Very grateful for that. There are a lot of webinars popping up all over the place
Hmm.
about PSLF and the waiver. So I'm very grateful that there's this, it's not just me, it's a lot of people just trying to get this information out. The DOE has done, can do so much better on this communication front. Lots of room for improvement.
Yeah. So before we finish up today, and I'm going to have you on again next week to talk more broadly about PSLF and student loans and what people who are maybe currently in school can and who don't have a history where they can take advantage of the waiver, but do need to are planning to go into public service and need to get all their kind of ducks in a row. We'll deal with all of that next week. But for now, before we finish up, I was wondering if you could tell me just a little bit more about the Facebook group, and we'll talk more about it again next week. There's a link to it in the show notes, but I want to know your pitch on who it's for and what people should know about joining, so they can get a head start on that before next week's episode airs.
So our Facebook group is for anybody in public service who has eligible loans or even ineligible loans as of right now. Public service loan forgiveness is a federally backed benefits program. It's written into our master promissory notes. And for folks who are in school right now, what they should do, like you said, we'll get more into that. But what they should know before joining the group is there's just a few screening questions. Be honest. Agree to the group rules. There are 10 of them, and our group disclaimer as well. And new members have 14 days to read through the wealth of resources we have created. We have created guides to walk new members through what is this PSLF, this thing. And then we have many posts in our featured section with latest news, announcements. One of our main go-tos for the PSLF program in that section is called the PSLF Index. And within it, it's sectioned off by various, topics related to PSLF and links to more posts within our group. And it'll help them navigate. Start from the beginning, go through the guides, go through the PSLF flowchart, and read and read. While you're doing that, look at your student loan portfolio at studentaid.gov. Log in, download your text file. How many loans do you have? What kind of loans do you have? If you have anything other than direct loans in your portfolio, you will need to take action to fully benefit. But again, it just depends on where people are at in their PSLF journey on where to start. So hope
Great.
that helps.
No, it helps a lot. And please, if you're listening to this, go join the group. It really is. It's a wonderful, supportive group, just a wealth of knowledge and experience in that group. And I can't recommend it strongly enough. So, one more time, I just want to thank you for joining me for this conversation today. It's truly been a joy to have you, and I'm so thankful you're here, and I'm thankful that we'll get to continue this conversation more broadly about PSLF next week. So, thanks for everything.
Thank you for having me, and I just want to give a huge shout out to my administrators and moderators. Without them, I wouldn't be here. As well as to all of our current members. We're almost 140,000. And within the group, and I owe it to my team as well as setting forth, the expectations up front. It's a very positive community, and I super appreciate our members as well as my moderators and admin team, just killing it week after week. And we're all volunteers. Just want you to know we're all volunteers. Some of us have already gotten PSLF or TEPSLF, and the team stays on to help more people. We have members who get PSLF or TEPSLF, and they stay on to help other members, because it all comes from that fundamental, right? We all are in it together. We want to reduce suffering. We want to increase success. We believe in the program, and we believe that everyone has a right as a public service worker with federal student loans. They should be eligible and be able to access this benefit. So thank you so much for having me. I look forward to next week's conversation.
Great. We'll talk to you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, listeners, just wanted to give you a quick follow-up on the topic from this episode. Literally, the day after recording this, President Biden's administration announced some pretty big changes to student loans, including a significant loan forgiveness program, a new loan forgiveness program, where he was canceling debt, $10,000 to $20,000, depending on a variety of factors. Also, some other kinds of changes announced related to student loans and student loan payments. So I'm going to put those links in the show notes for you to go and check out. I don't think it really changed anything that we talked about in the interview that you just listened to. Really, as of right now, as of when this episode is going to air, there haven't been any extensions to the temporary waiver or any other significant changes to the public service loan forgiveness program. So nothing to really correct or alter, except to say that you should definitely check out some of the announcements if you haven't already. I'm sure it really was in the news cycle for a bit. So that's it. I also just wanted to say thank you to you listeners. I really do value each and every one of you, and hope that this show helps in one way or another as you continue your own paths navigating higher education, or in the case of student loan debt, the aftermath of that higher education. As I've mentioned before, since I try to keep the show as listener-driven as possible, please send me your thoughts and questions. Hit up the show notes on Twitter or shoot me an email at your leisure. And if you do have a question, please send it to questions@yourshadowadvisor.com, or head to the website to submit an audio question that I might air on the podcast. So that's it for today. Please be sure to tune in next week for the second interview with Christina. We're going to be talking more broadly about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Facebook group that she founded, and about more broadly about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness program. So be sure that you don't miss that next week. So that's it for today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're feeling up to it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. Thanks again for listening in. I'll be back with more next week.